Hello, hello, hello. It's September now. Hope everything's going well. Chapter 5. A Hand on a Key. Ariel had only two ideas for keeping Security 1K occupied. When it stood in front of her and started to step out, she forced herself to stand her ground. As she had expected, the influence of the first law prevented it from forcing her aside, though in an emergency she doubted that it would have hesitated. The robot remained just inside the Dionite wall, watching her from the darkness of its horizontal islet. "I need to see Chemo," she said. All she had in mind was to present a first law problem, and to speak as slowly and as long as she could. Derek would have to do the rest by getting inside and getting a key, if he could, as quickly as possible. "You may not enter this facility. Chemo is occupied." If possible, its voice was even more formal than the usual robot speaking voice. "May I help you?" "This is a first law problem." She started to say more, then remembered that she was stalling. The robot waited until it was clear that she was not going to explain without prompting. "What is this problem?" "A total of 5 humans are in Robot City." "Yes? You are the one called Catherine?" "I used to be. My real name is Ariel." "Another is called Derek." "That's right." "What is the first law problem?" Ariel smiled to herself. That was the kind of stalling she wanted. What she had to do was be just a little illogical or unclear, forcing it to ask questions for clarification. "3 other humans are here." "Who are they?" "We don't know." "Who is in danger?" "Derek and I are in potential danger." "What danger is this?" "Well, humans don't have to obey the first law, so these other 3 could be dangerous to us." "In what way?" I'm not sure." "There is no clear danger." The robot took a step backward as a prelude to resealing the wall. "How much experience have you had with humans?" she called quickly. "Do you know their history with each other?" "No." It stopped where it was, now more shattered inside the dome. "I have had only 2 previous experiences with a human." "So? You don't know how they fight all the time? And have a history of wars and killing each other?" "Some human history is available in the First Central Computer library." "In what day does this relate to the first law problem?" The robot stepped forward again to its previous spot. "Well, unknown humans are generally considered dangerous. You can never tell what they'll do or why." "For what reason?" "Just because they're unknown. We have to be careful. This is a normal part of being human, especially when you're traveling around in unfamiliar places." "You consider unidentified humans to be dangerous until more information is available?" "Yes. Yeah, that's it." "No humans are in this facility. What do you need with Chemo for your first law problem?" "Chemo's in charge of making teleportation devices. This is the only way we know of to leave Robot City." "You are in no clear danger. Therefore, no first law problem pertains. Teleportation devices are not required." "We could be killed or injured by surprise. This has happened to people many times. Your failure to help now is a first law violation." Ariel saw the robot hesitate, and suddenly realized that she might win this argument, let alone succeed in stalling. "Chemo is in charge of this facility, correct? Let Chemo decide." The robot looked at her. "I am equipped to make decisions of this kind. Chemo does not have greater authority to judge and resolve a first law problem than I have." "So you agree that this is a first law problem?" She made it a statement, not a question. "That is not clear." "But Chemo does have authority over the key to perihelion and the other keys. You don't have that. Since the resolution of the problem requires my getting a hold of the key, or keys, rather, Chemo is the one I must consult." "You have not proven that you are in danger." Shuddering with frustration, she drew in a long, deep breath. "Listen to me. I believe we may be in danger. I know a lot more about people than you do. You don't know enough about humans to judge if we're in danger." She stared at him in fury, breathing hard. At last the robot stepped back, making room for her. "We shall consult Chemo." She smiled with relief and followed him inside the building. The robot led her through a winding route around machines of various sizes and types, none of which were familiar to her. She wanted to look around for Derek, but was afraid to be obvious about it. He could easily be lost among all the units here. Within the range of the cautious glances she took, he was nowhere in sight. Chemo was standing over its console on the floor when they approached. "This human claims to have a first-law problem," said Security 1K, "one that only you can resolve." "You are the one called Catherine?" "I used to be. My new name's Ariel. I understand. My designation was recently changed also. What is the nature of this first-law problem?" "Here we go again," she muttered to herself. "Look, how much do you know about human history? About how humans kill each other all the time and fight wars and stuff?" Derek looked up apprehensively as the seat carried him into the dimmer light of the second story. He was most worried about being challenged by a robot up here, but as the seat clicked into place and the dionite solidified beneath it, he found himself standing behind a curved metal screen. On one side, pale orange light glowed from a doorway in the screen. Otherwise, the entire length of the short wall, the area with lift access, was screened off. He slid out of the seat and carefully peeked around the edge of the doorway. Only one robot was in the area. It stood in the foreground watching as a tray was extended toward it from inside a block housing about 2 meters high. The tray held an array of shimmering silver rectangles about 5 centimeters by 15, exactly the appearance of the original key of perihelion. Derek guessed that the unit expelling the tray had just completed the final integration and cooling. As he watched, the robot picked up one key by itself and slid it into a slot in another unit. It then studied the readouts. It looked like a testing procedure. Another wall, which sealed off the bulk of this level, was just beyond the block housing. Derek heard a muted hum from beyond it. The pale orange light was thrown by a series of monitors high on this wall, and cast a series of faint, overlapping shadows. At the moment he had nothing to do but watch. If his entry had been noticed downstairs, he was not pressed for time. Getting a key by stealth might be easier up here than by launching into another frustrating debate about the laws. Apparently the entry into hyperspace was behind the big wall. It did not look especially strong, but the minimalistic engineering characteristics of the AV robots made all appearances deceiving. He would not have been surprised to find the barrier very solid and the sound beyond it all absolutely deafening. The robot took the key from the testing unit, or whatever it was, then punched a button and set it down on the tray. It stood with its back to Derek as it picked up another key and inserted it. At no time had the robot looked away from the readouts and keys, or moved its feet from their positions. With the sound from beyond the wall as camouflage, Derek thought he might be able to move without being noticed. He kept an eye on the robot as he slid around the edge of the doorway and crept behind it. The robot continued to watch the monitors. The key that had already been tested glinted alone at one end of the tray. Derek stood directly behind the robot, waiting to see the robot's pattern of movement again. When the next key was ejected, the robot laid it next to the previous one and inserted a third into the unit it faced. Derek reached very slowly for one of the tested keys, keeping his eyes on the robot for any sign of unexpected movement. The robot did not look away from the readouts. Derek picked up one of the keys and slowly began to withdraw his arm. Just as he noticed that his arm was throwing a faint shadow across the monitors, the robot whirled and grabbed his throat in a hard squeeze. He began to choke, his tongue out and his eyes bulging. A second later the pressure was immediately released on his throat, but as he bent forward gasping, the robot took a firm, though gentler, grip on his arm. He still held the key behind his back. "Humans are more fragile than robots," said the robot apologetically. It was quivering with the internal trauma caused by a potential violation of the first law. "I did not realize immediately that the first law pertained. Not until I turned and saw you. You're unharmed?" Its speech was slow. Derek nodded and swallowing. Yeah. The robot was still shaking and hesitant. Identify yourself and your purpose here. My name is Derek, and I'm okay, so don't short-circuit yourself. Uh, Security 1K did not notify me of your entry. This is a restricted area. Show your clearance. I don't have any. I'll just go. Derek turned, but the robot did not relinquish his arm. Return the key in your hand. Derek couldn't think of an argument, so he held out the key, smiling weakly. The robot took it. Then the robot looked at a light blinking on one of the monitors. "We shall go downstairs," it said. "I believe your presence here has been noted. In any case, that warning light summons all who are up here to report the chemo." "You might take a key with you." Derek reached around the robot for one. As he had expected, the robot grasped his hand. Derek feigned a shot of pain, wincing theatrically and twisting around so that he had backed into the tray. As the robot pried one key out of his hand, he reached behind him with the other hand and palmed the other key which had already been tested. Without further conversation, the robot escorted Derek around the screen to the security seat. It had Derek sit down while it stood on some kind of bar beneath the seat. The floor opened and they rode down together. Derek could see Security 1K standing with Ariel at Chemo's desk. She gave him a questioning look as he was half pulled over to the console. He suppressed a smile with considerable effort. These robots were too sharp to miss any hint of collusion between them. He broke eye contact with her. Before Chemo could speak, Derek decided to throw the robot off guard by taking the offensive. "How did you know I was up there?" "Both my console and the security console register each generation and weight on each floor. However, I did not notice your presence immediately, as I had been distracted by discussions of possible imperatives under the laws of robotics." Chemo turned toward Ariel and Security 1K. Then it addressed the robot still holding Derek's arm. "Process 12K, you may release your grip. Report what transpired in your jurisdiction." "The human came up behind me and reached for one of the finished keys," said the robot from the upper floor. "He did this twice. I retrieved the key in both cases and retrieved them. When I first apprehended him, I did not know that the first law pertained to the situation. I almost harmed him." "We are speaking aloud for your benefit," Chemo said to Derek and Ariel. "On this matter of the first law, you should be informed of our decision. Derek, you are unharmed?" Yeah, I'm okay." Derek, now free of Process 12K's grasp, moved away from him slightly. He had been feeling the key in his hand and remembering the way it worked. Carefully he shifted it around, pushing each corner of the key in turn. A button appeared on the last corner on the side facing him. Now he had to get Ariel to grip the key, or at least hold on to him so he could push the button. With the robots so close, they wouldn't get more than one chance. Wherever the key took them would be an escape from the immediate scene. He would have to gamble that it was set for a safe place. After that they could plan their next move. "Ariel has claimed that a first law problem exists," said Chemo. "Do you agree that you two are in danger from unknown humans present on the planet?" Derek caught her slight nod. "Yeah, you bet. We have no idea who they are." "Neither of you has presented any specific danger, or any evidence of one," said Chemo. "Do you have any evidence of danger that she does not possess?" "Well, no." Derek shrugged slightly and started shuffling his feet. He leaned a little closer to Process 12K. As he had hoped, Process 12K moved away slightly. Derek stepped in front of him so that only Security 1K stood between Ariel and him. "I agree with her, though. People can be very dangerous, especially strangers. We would be a lot safer getting off this planet." "You will have more contact with humans off this planet than you have here," said Chemo. "Most of them will, of course, be strangers and therefore dangerous by your description. Here you have an entire population of robots that cannot allow you to come to harm." "Only if you can protect us," said Ariel. "Elsewhere," said Chemo, "you will have only yourselves to rely upon for safety." "Now listen to her," said Derek. He reached in front of Security 1K to take her arm and pulled her to him. The two of us are isolated here. He was just talking as a distraction, while he got an arm around her and pulled one of her arms behind her back. He placed her hand, behind both their backs, on the key with his. "Now," he declared triumphantly, holding the key with one hand and pushing the button with the other. Nothing happened. And that's the end of this chapter. Looks like the robots didn't quite get the key to work as they'd hoped. Hope you all enjoyed. See you next week.